The Great British Water Project was undertaken by the Don Hanson Charitable Foundation in partnership with Aquaphor and City to Sea. Specially made Great British Water Project resource boxes were sent to 650 schools across the UK to undertake a series of experiments to investigate the chemistry of drinking water, the importance of freshwater habitats and ecosystems, the water cycle, and plastic pollution in our riverways. Over 2,200 young students have taken part in the activities so far, and about 500 sets of results have been sent in. The following is a preliminary overview of the findings of 5 of the main activities, namely a survey to investigate pond life across the UK, an analysis of the chemistry of rainwater to establish if acid rain still impacts parts of the UK, the blind taste test to investigate which water type children prefer the taste of, out of regular tap water, bottled mineral water, or filtered tap water, an 11-in-1 chemical analysis of tap water samples, and a plastics artwork competition to drive creativity. Further datasets continue to flood in from schools. For those schools still taking part, please do continue to send your results over the next term in the lead up to the COP26 United Climate Change Conference, when the final results of the Great British Water Project will be presented. Schools across the UK took part in surveying their pond life to assess the biodiversity of ponds across the country. The basic methodology involved making 15 sweeps of a pond net, each sweep being approximately 1 metre long at different depths, in an attempt to get a representative sample of the life in each pond. All schools were given a pond net and an identification guide in the form of the 2020 Local Safari book, which the Don Hanson Charitable Foundation sent to each school last year. The schools that took part documented nearly 2,600 individual animals in their ponds. All surveyed ponds contained animal life. 36 different animal types were recorded in ponds across the UK, but surprisingly, most ponds contained very different assemblages of animals. Prior to the survey, it was assumed that ponds would show relatively similar assemblages of species across the UK, with a few outliers, but this proved absolutely not to be the case. While 4 animal groups stood out as the most common, namely backswimmers, tadpoles, water snails and dragonfly larvae, they were by no means in every pond. The lowest number of species recorded in any one pond was just 1 species, which were pond skaters. Pond skaters are one of the first colonizer species, so it would be interesting to know if this pond was set up recently. The highest number of species that was observed was at 4 schools. Each of these had 8 animal species. All other schools were somewhere between these extremes. Most ponds contained very different assemblages of species, usually in relatively low numbers of individuals making up each species population. This indicates very good biodiversity nationally, as you would likely otherwise not see sustained reproductive populations consisting of small numbers of species across the country. So this is surprisingly good news. The other main point is the surprisingly wide diversity of several rare pond-dwelling species, including the occurrence of rare great crested newts. Newts did very well in ponds across the UK, especially the smooth newt. As amphibians with porous skin, newts are very susceptible to pollutants, so their occurrence across the UK is actually very good news. No strong trend was observed in the number of species in ponds in different regions of the UK in terms of biodiversity, except a general, relatively weak tendency for more species to be observed in the south. The other great surprise was the widespread and relatively large numbers of leeches found in ponds across the UK, with an average of 1.3 leeches per pond. While leeches may not be a popular pond-dwelling animal for their blood-sucking nature, as a parasite, they're actually an indication of a relatively healthy and stable pond ecosystem, which is reassuring. Several animal species were found in a single pond and not recorded in any others, namely stonefly nymphs, caddisfly larvae, and freshwater shrimps. No crayfish were observed in ponds across the UK, perhaps owing to their need for moving water, but freshwater mussels were recorded at 3 school ponds across the country. All in all, the results were very surprising in showing just how diverse the ponds of the UK really are. Schools also took part in the UK-wide rainwater survey, analysing the pH and basic chemistry of rainwater collected at their schools. The focus of the survey concerned pH in an effort to establish if acid rain, which was so prominent and notorious in the 1980s and 1990s, was detectable today. The schools recorded surprisingly diverse rainwater pH. The strongest rainwater acidity reported by schools was 6.2 on the pH scale. This reading was very widespread across the UK and actually represented by far the most common result, being over 57% of the rainwater results. Carbon dioxide is weakly acidic and dissolves in rain as carbonic acid. This mild acidity is more or less the natural pH for rain, which usually varies from low 6 to 7 on the pH scale. The great surprise of this survey was the recording of alkaline rain, with readings of 7.2 pH recorded at approximately 10% of schools, and 7.8% pH recorded at 6% of all schools. The occurrence of mildly alkaline rain was not expected, and is often the result of emissions containing calcium or sodium. The rainfall chemistry tests revealed an interesting correlation between hardness and the higher alkaline readings. While not absolutely consistent, we did find a general trend that the harder the rainwater, the more alkaline the readings, which is to be expected. The high pH records were mostly supported by total alkalinity readings, with a general correlation visible, although some anomalous results can be observed in which low acidic pH readings also recorded high total alkalinity readings. The good news is that the UK-wide rainwater survey indicates that, on the whole, there is no evidence of significant acid rain. The highest alkaline rainwater readings that were recorded are perhaps more worrying than the highest rain acidity records, as the acidity lies within the natural rainwater pH, but the alkaline readings may well be evidence of pollutants. It is possible that the alkaline rain records are completely harmless, and the result of soil-borne dusts blown into the atmosphere that have impacted pH in similar ways to other parts of the world. The full sets of data from the rainwater survey will be presented in the autumn. The blind taste test was developed to directly compare children's preferences for tap water compared to filtered tap water and mineral water in plastic bottles. Do we really need all of those plastic bottles of mineral water? Or does tap water or filtered tap water taste just as good? Teachers anonymously prepared samples of each water type. So far, over 2,200 students have tested the 3 water types, bestowing upon each sample one of 5 possible grades, ranging from 2 smiley faces to 2 angry faces, resulting in a score for each blind taste test of between -2 and +2, which was then recalibrated to a 0 to 100 scale, where 50 is neutral. The clear hero of the preliminary results, we're pleased to report, was tap water, in relative and absolute terms. Tap water was rated the best tasting water in just over half of all blind taste tests done, with an absolute satisfaction rating of 66. All waters were rated above neutral, so the test showed that the UK students liked the tastes of all 3 water types. Where filtered tap water was rated better tasting than normal tap water, the average tap water rating was in absolute terms just 54, a whole 12 points lower than the average. So filtered water outperformed where tap water tasted worse. Where filtered tap water was rated better tasting than bottled water, the tap water had the same average rating of 66 as in all samples. Tap water was rated as better tasting than bottled water in nearly 60% of the blind taste tests. As may be expected, taste ratings for tap water had significant negative correlation with chlorine and bromine concentrations, as well as iron and nitrates. The taste ratings for filtered tap water did not show any significant correlation with those impurities, which goes to show when you filter tap water, the bad taste is successfully removed. The experiment ranked tap water very highly, and students generally liked its taste. As may be expected, where high levels of chlorine were recorded, tap water ranked low in terms of taste. But where the tap water taste ranked low, filtering the water proved to eliminate the bad taste very successfully. In about 2/3 of cases, whether on its own or filtered, tap water was rated with a better taste test than bottled mineral water. The results seem to indicate that on the basis of taste, through a combination of tap water and filtered tap water, we can do away with those plastic bottles of mineral water. In addition to the blind taste test, the Great British Water Project set out to test the chemistry of tap water across the UK. 11-in-1 chemical tests revealed results for hardness, total alkalinity, total chlorine, free chlorine, bromine, nitrate, nitrite, copper, lead, iron, and pH. All of the data is shown on the interactive maps on the Hanson Box website. It's fascinating to see how these results change by region, and to correlate these results with the blind taste test results. Go have a look for yourself on www.hansonbox.org. We asked each school to test their water and double-check their results in case of typos and errors. In addition to the results of the chemical tests, we also asked each school to send in a sample of their water, which can be further analysed to make sure the initial results are accurate. Unsurprisingly, half of the reporting schools showed a neutral hardness of 100 points, and of the others, a third were soft, which was 0 to 50 points, and 2/3 were hard, which was over 100 points. Water hardness positively correlated to total alkalinity and pH. Reported pH levels range from 6.2 to 8.4, the minimum and maximum levels of the test strips. Only 2 schools showed high chlorine levels of 5 to 10 milligrams per litre, which may have been caused by short-term measures taken by water companies after heavy rain to ensure the safety of their tap water. These can be remeasured now to check if this was a short-term issue. Bromine levels at 5 milligrams per litre were recorded at 5 schools versus the recommended maximum level of 2. These were all schools which didn't have high chlorine levels. Nitrite levels were all fine. However, nitrate levels are also a current source of concern, with 15 schools at 100 milligrams per litre, double the recommended maximum level, of whom 3 were reported as 250 milligrams per litre. Copper saw 3 schools at 5 to 10 milligrams per litre versus the recommended 2, as well as 2 hair-raising levels of 300, which we've assumed to be typos. Iron registered at 5 to 10 milligrams per litre or otherwise were unrecorded. Lead results are a concern at this stage, with 70 schools recording 20 milligrams per litre, which is double the recommended maximum, and 22 schools reported 50 milligrams per litre, and 22 schools reported at the 50 milligrams per litre level. Lead and nitrate levels, both concerns, correlated positively at 28%. The 11-in-1 chemical test results raised more questions than expected. Overall, water quality is fine, but some very high levels for some of the compounds tested were identified. Naturally, it is possible that the water may arrive at each school fine, but then may go through old piping, which may account for some of the very high levels of various compounds identified. Although this doesn't make the results any less worrying. We're going to analyse the findings in greater detail, then present an update when all of the final data results are launched later in the year. And now to the results of the plastic artwork competition.